Right, everyone. It's been a conundrum for some time. Why is it that liberals all of a sudden are concerned about warmongering? When you've got a president who, at least in his first term, never started a new war, is trying to ease off on several proxy wars, literally as we speak. But it's all of a sudden a big problem when a boat full of narcos is bombarded in the Caribbean. All of a sudden, that's warmongering. That's war posturing. Oh my God, we're gonna have World War III because a unlicensed Venezuelan flagged, well, not even flagged, smuggling boat was bullseyed in the Caribbean Sea. I find this very, very strange overall. I find it actually a little bit concerning that people can flip like 180 depending on the letter after the name of the person who's the chief executive at the time on whether they think that a coordinated strike is actually something that is number one legal and number two, potentially an act of war. It is not an act of war for the United States to go after such a vessel, like the Trendiawaga vessel that was bombed, several days ago. Maduro never raised any real complaint about it, and there's a reason for that. If he were to do so and say, "Oh, you bombed our ship," well, then you're acknowledging that with your particular permission, drugs are being smuggled into the United States. Again, I'm anti-drug war. I don't really care about whether people use mind-altering substances. I'm no hypocrite. I've used them before myself, although not hard drugs. I've never touched those. I've had the sense not to do that. But being anti-drug war means I believe there should be domestic production. I believe that the United States should become a drug exporter. I think that that would be a great idea. We'd make so much money. Made in the USA, stamped onto every bale of weed and so forth. No problem. Yeah, we can make money. Who cares? And also make our own products so that we know that it's not laced with anything. There's a big problem with the imported drugs is that a lot of them are laced with fentanyl. Try to get people hooked, and then you can make more money. Whereas if it's got standards and grades and so forth, if there's a low level of regulation, just basic bitch levels of regulation is all I would support, by the way, then at least you know you're not getting, heroin in your weed or something like that. This is not an act of war. And liberals are being total goddamn hypocrites. Targeted strikes have been used by every modern president going back a very, very long time. Never before, under any Democratic administration, have liberals complained about it. And the funny part is, finally, we get a Republican president that doesn't start a bunch of wars, and all of a sudden, a targeted strike is a big problem, even though the regime from which the ship launched doesn't apparently have any particular problem with the fact that we did it. They don't care. Maduro's not crazy enough to, rabble rouse over this particular issue because it would be claiming, yes, indeed, with the will of the state of Venezuela, these groups, these narcos, are operating. It is our will that they be left alone. Well, that ship only had one purpose, and that was to smuggle an enormous amount of drugs, and it looked like a considerable amount, into the United States. This is the only purpose that this ship had. This is a non-state entity. I mean, and what is Tren de Aragua going to declare war on the United States? Be a short war, I believe. I don't think that that's going to happen. And the fact is that this group has been designated as a terrorist movement. And while I do not believe in the arbitrary designation having any meaning, I don't care that this ship was destroyed. It means nothing. Non-state actor, smuggling, undercutting our domestic drug industry, how sad, and filled with people who are terroristic. We've seen what Trendy Arago is capable of in Colorado, among other places. Um, Quite frankly, I just don't care. It's not an activity. This is not a prelude to war. What's Venezuela going to do? Do they have such a powerful military that they're actually going to declare war on the United States? That would be suicidal. Maduro would be gone within weeks. It wouldn't take that long. Plenty of movements within Venezuela, it seems, that would be willing to rise up if the need arose. And then you have Venezuela gunning after part of Guyana, Essequibo province specifically, trying to get that offshore oil. Not that it's going to help your economy. Again, you're still going to be a monoculture economically speaking. The sad part is Venezuela has a very unique climate and a huge amount of arable land. Not only do you have energy resources, you have all sorts of other good shit too. The climate there, especially along the coast, is perfect for growing all manner of agricultural crops. It's perfect for extracting certain mineral resources in the south part of the country. I mean, you've basically got it made. Venezuela is in a prime location. It's only being held back by socialism. First, it was held back by the trappings of the colonial era. And so then you have your revolution, the Chavezistas and so forth, and the economy gets overhauled. And they say, look, they believed the peak oil myth. And by the way, this is not Maduro's fault. I will always mention this whenever Venezuela is mentioned. It was Chavez's fault. Chavez's economic miracle that was touted by the legacy media and by people like Bernie Sanders and the AOCs of the world really was not a miracle at all. It was a flash in the pan, basically. Hey, oil prices keep rising. Oh, we'll borrow more money. We'll quickly build more infrastructure and give people washing machines and electricity and all of these other things and improve their quality of life and things will be great. That worked so long as oil prices were very high. It worked very well, but it was short-sighted thinking. The problem is that the oil prices then went drastically down, and they're still down below their peaks anyway. They're higher now. It's going to be lower fairly soon because the United States is unleashing its energy industry, which I believe is a good thing. Venezuela will suffer again. The problem is that when that price drops again, you have to get China to forgive your debt and stuff like that. For a while, New York was importing oil directly from Venezuela, and that was really odd at the time. That was during the actual oil crisis because the Obama administration, of course, was no friend to U.S. energy needs. But you're concerned about war because of one boat being torpedoed, basically. Not technically torpedoed, but you know what I mean. We blew one boat out of the water and all of a sudden it's an act of war. If this had been under the Biden administration, like if they had taken the border policy seriously, which they didn't, none of these liberal commentators would have jack shit to say about it. Meanwhile, there's no hypocrisy on the MAGA side. I wouldn't have cared if it was the Biden administration doing it. I would have applauded them for actually doing something sane for a change. This is the right thing to do. Our military, that is the standing military, starts with the Navy and Marines. It was a maritime force. The land military was supposed to always be just militia. It was back then, it didn't, I mean, the average person is capable of fielding a swivel gun or a musket or something like that. And so having a militia system, like the Swiss had already built, made more sense. If you're going to have a standing military, though, the original idea was basically a maritime military. Basically, the United States military consisted of a bunch of ships guarded at shore and at sea by Marines. That's the origination of the U.S. military. Because back then you didn't have an Air Force, obviously, because you didn't have flight, and there was no particularly large standing military force. It was militia that could be called up in time of need. That was the whole point. Our inception as a nation that fielded a military in the organized capacity at all was maritime, going after pirates, going after smugglers, and things like that, keeping the shipping lanes clean so that we could do trade. That was the whole point. These days, of course, you need a more beefy military capability because the Cold War and all this bullshit. But that was the original purpose. You're not going to war with a nation when you bomb an unflagged vessel in international waters, carrying illicit substances into your country. That isn't even, the other country doesn't even care that you bombed them. The only people that seem to care are people with TDS. Do you really care whether a bunch of Trendiarago members get bullseyed? I don't. I don't care at all. I just think that we should dissuade them from bothering to come here by having a domestic drug trade that we can more easily regulate. I hate that term, but in the sense of keeping fentanyl out of the weed supply, basically. and nothing more. Can you imagine made in Vermont weed getting sold in Europe? How much money that would that would bring us? Oh, Vermont would be the land of milk and honey if you were to legalize that. That's about all. Peace out.